Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I very much welcome the opportunity of being able to join you by means of this video message on the occasion of the launch of a new report by our International Resources Panel. When UNEP established this panel a few years ago, one of our greatest priorities was on how we could shorten the distance between emerging science and analysis and where policy actions are initiated and taken. The International Resources Panel has proved to be a vital part of our global community of bringing scientific findings and research both to a point of synthesis and secondly to also be able to provide it in a format that will allow national authorities, the international community and the many actors in the sustainable development arena to be able to draw on better science for better policy making. The report on building natural capital that particularly focuses on the relationship between the emerging instrument of REDD and embedded in the broader discussion about the transition towards a green economy could find no better host than the government of Indonesia. It is in Jakarta and in many of the workshops and meetings that have taken place in Indonesia in recent years that the relationship between both this new instrument and opportunity of REDD and REDD+ has emerged and matured into a discussion that also addresses the question of the broader transition towards a green economy. Under the leadership of President Yudhoyono and many of the senior officials in Indonesia, we in the United Nations Environment Programme have been beneficiaries in learning about how you tackle some of the most difficult choices and sometimes dilemmas that arise when you're trying to reverse the economic signals, but also the dynamics that very often have led to a significant erosion of both the forest ecosystem estate, but also the phenomena of illegal logging and the loss to local communities and the national economy of a major economic and ecological asset, which in turn has major implications on the social dimension of both the communities that live with those forests, on livelihoods and jobs. It is the IRP's contention that our attention that needs to be focused on how we can reframe the discussion about the value of forest ecosystems begins in one sense with valuation, but not only in the sense of monetization of these values, but also an understanding of the multiple functions that forest ecosystems provide to livelihoods, to national economies, how they're reflected in land use planning, but also in systems of national accounting. We have had the opportunity through the window of the Climate Change Convention to develop an instrument that has now become part of our terminology and our toolbox and toolkit in the international community, REDD+. Indeed, the Warsaw meeting of the Climate Change Convention last December in Poland gave a big forward-looking signal to this platform on which we can progress many of the ideas that have emerged partly out of trying to understand how a response to climate change requires actions in many domains across our different development sectors. We have also learned, and the IRP report puts great emphasis on this, that in having such an instrument and in having such a platform, we should not forget that if it is an isolated intervention, it is unlikely to succeed because the underlying factors that drive both forest degradation and forest destruction are embedded in a much deeper system of economic signals of the phenomena and the challenge of addressing poverty, also corruption and illegal logging, and an economy that has grown up almost in parallel to what otherwise would be a rational national development strategy. Correcting these signals, trying to address vested interests, also looking at issues such as land tenure and embedding the understanding of the contribution of forest ecosystems in both the climate-related aspects of carbon sequestration, but also the benefits in terms of income, in terms of biodiversity conservation and many related sectors will be at the heart of ensuring that REDD+ is not in itself just an answer with which we can reverse, for instance, forest degradation and land degradation, but ultimately will allow us to provide another building block in enabling the transition towards a green economy. As you're all gathered in Jakarta in Indonesia this week, I urge you to take a close look, in particular with our colleagues who have led this process of debate in Indonesia, to learn some of the lessons of how we can embed instruments such as REDD+ in a broader understanding of not only ecosystem services, but indeed of building the kinds of economic policies, markets, but also regulatory norms and standards that will allow a different way of valuation to emerge and ultimately to create the economics of a sustainable economy to become the more dominant driver. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the co-chairs, Professor von Weizsäcker and also Ashok Khosla, and the teams that in particular have produced this report on building natural capital for the intellectual, scientific and also policy leadership that they continue to provide. It is through the individuals and their analytical capacity and their willingness to engage in the policy arena that we are able to advance both the understanding of what needs to be done, but even more importantly, the opportunities and options that are there for us. It is also in countries such as Indonesia, but also many others, that we find the lessons learned to be vital and fundamental building blocks for a different kind of outlook in terms of forest ecosystems on our planet. In UNEP, we remain committed to working with you and to also taking the findings of this report by the International Resources Panel into many different arenas. And I hope that out of the meeting in Jakarta, we will get the kinds of roadmaps that will also allow UNEP to play a useful and valuable role in addition to all the work that all of you are doing across the globe, in your countries, in academic and scientific institutions, but also in the broader context of our society, be it NGOs, be it the private sector. We see many good signals, but we need to accelerate them, and only a more systemic approach will ultimately allow us to succeed. I wish you a very successful meeting, a very successful launch, and look forward to hearing back from you in due course. Thank you.